welcome to the February episode of Diverse Joy, a podcast and educational video series that infuses science, practical skills, and most of all, joy into diversity discussions. My co-host is the cosmic and ever ethereal Dr. William T.L. Cox.
And my co-host is the swirly and quirky Dr. Amber Nelson. Yay. And today we have a wonderful special guest, Xizhou Xie. Xizhou is a statistician. She and I work together with her as a data analyst. We've published papers together. And Xizhou's an artist. You may have seen some of her work for sale at Target. If you're watching on the video, you can see a lot of her art that we decorated the studio with. And we'll have links in the episode description for those of you who are listening. Xizhou grew up in Shanghai and moved here, did you say it was 2012? Yep. In 2012 and is now a green card permanent resident. And some of that will play into what we talk about today. Yeah. And welcome, Xizhou. So we always start with what is bringing you joy. So, hey, what's bringing you joy?
Thank you, Will and Amber, for having me. Welcome. And it's good to see you again.
Yeah, you too.
And I love that, just before we talk about joy, I love that we're focusing on joy and talking about diversity, because I feel like especially now we can kind of lose track of that, and it's just such an important way to be connected and still, talk about this important topic. Yeah. And the joy that I want to share is it's my cats. I have two cats at home, Shadow and Kit Kat, and you've met them. And yeah, sometimes you look at them and you're like, how did I get so lucky to deserve these two in my life? I think my husband would prefer that I talk about him in that way. But the cats, those are my joy.
That's where it needs to be.
Wes is great too.
Yeah. Oh, I love that so much. I've been considering getting a cat. In fact, my family, I don't even think I've shared this, but my family bought me a bunch of stuff at Christmas time for a cat. Oh. So I have like a fancy litter box and I have a tower.
But no cat.
I even like a carrying case and everything, like a backpack. So I'm prepared for one. I have yet to adopt. So, okay. But I will eventually.
One in your future.
You see, one is in my future for sure. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And what about your joy?
Yeah, there's lots of things that bring me joy, but one of the things most recently is I've connected with a BIPOC community group through my church, and just reconnecting, I think I've shared before, but back in probably 2020 is one of the times that I realized how crucial it was to have a like BIPOC centered space. And now having this community group that is specifically centering being BIPOC, and we meet once a month, and my church has a grant, and so they bring in different cultural foods, and we just sit and be together, and we talk about the world, and we talk about experiences, but we also center joy. And it's just this beautiful space with other like-minded folks and other BIPOC folks that we can just come and be together and share meals together. And it's been so life-giving for me, and having a place where we can just come and be with one another, share with one another, grieve with one another, and have joy and center joy and play with one another. So I am really, really thankful. This is at West Hills Covenant Church, and my pastor is this amazing Korean woman named Stephanie Mathis. Hey girl, hey. And yeah, this group is amazing, and she pulled us all together. So I'm just very, very thankful for it. And it brings me tons of joy. So yeah. And Will, how about you? What's your joy?
So my joy, so this is an episode coming out in February, which is Super Bowl time for people who are into football, which is not really me.
Nor I.
But I have a friend group who one of them, his name's Mark, wanted to have kind of a Super Bowl party. He's also not really into football, but because it's such a big cultural thing, but he didn't really like have the TVs and the entertaining space. So he actually asked Eric Roman and I 2 years ago if we would host his Super Bowl party, more or less, or team up with him to have a Super Bowl party. And so we did, and it's a soup Super Party.
I
love that.
People make soups, and the first year we had 13 different soups, like an African peanut stew and chicken and wild rice, and like so many different soups. Past guest Nikki Vandermeulen made a matzo ball soup, and so it was a lot of fun. And like by the end of the night, you're like, oh, I've had so many soups.
So his stomach is sloshing from all the soup.
Yeah.
But it's perfect because it's February.
That's
it's
such a
soup
perfect
weather.
time for a soup. Yeah.
And the way we do it, because there's some people who are real serious about football and the Super Bowl, but most of us are like kind of joking around about it, like, oh, don't their butts look cute in the pants or whatever, or oh, we're waiting for the commercials. So in our house, we have our main living room kind of TV, and then down in the basement where the studio is, where we record, there's a TV and couch area. So we make one of those. One of those is a serious, like if you're talking about the game, you're focused, you're not being silly, and then we have the silly room where we can just chit chat and do whatever.
I love that.
So yeah, that's
So
it.
fun.
Done it twice now. We'll do it a third time. Maybe Xizhou can come. We'll invite you. And yeah, Super Bowl party.
That's so good. I love that.
So we're very excited to have you here. Thank you for agreeing to do this, Xizhou.
Welcome.
And so you are going to start us off. What are we talking about today?
Well, I wanted to talk about belonging as a topic because that's something that, as a first generation immigrant, you think about that, right? You left home where you grew up for 18 years in my case, and into a completely new environment. And for some people, you're on your own and it can be, lonely or scary. And the goal for immigrating is to have a better life, right? And
Absolutely.
and I feel like you can't really achieve that if you don't feel like you belong.
Yeah.
That's something that I ask myself sometimes. Do I feel like I belong here in Madison in the United States?
Yeah.
And what does that look like?
Yeah.
And I feel like it's also universal enough, right, for someone who's a minority.
Absolutely.
It's something that we all share. So
Yeah.
let's talk about that.
Yeah. We have touched on belonging just a little bit here and there. We talked a little bit about the difference between inclusion and belonging. We had a question about that last season, maybe the season before last. And really, there is a significant difference, right? Just being included or having a seat at the table versus actually feeling like you're supposed to be there, right? That you belong, that you are truly, your voice is heard, that you feel connected, that you have a sense of community. And we also talked about or mentioned that's one of the things that, particularly for minoritized groups, things that keep us places too, is when we feel a sense of belonging, or maybe contribute to us leaving a space, whether that's a country, a job, a city. If we don't have those roots in some way, or we don't feel like we belong, then we're much more likely to leave. Right. And I imagine as an immigrant that's a really big part of it too, is how do I start to find this sense of belonging? What has to happen in order for that to happen and to take root for you? Yeah.
I feel like, the difference between being included and belonging, it's kind of a fine line. I don't know if there's a scientific definition, but because you can be a part of something, but you may not feel like you're being your authentic self.
Exactly.
You may not feel your voices are being heard or being respected. You may be hiding part of yourself if that's possible.
Absolutely.
So
code switching, right? Like that's part of it too, is we code switch both in our behavior and how we talk, just to feel like we can fit, but it's not may not be an authentic representation of ourselves in those spaces. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I one of my questions for you is how might or how has belonging maybe shifted for you as you moved here in 2012 and now being here in 2025? Has it shifted, or your understanding of what belonging means, has that shifted? And how has your sense of belonging shifted? How has that shifted since being here?
Yeah. So I came here in 2012. And I was a student. I was here for an education. But I also came here, I think, with the premise of a United States that is very, open and accepting, right, with a Black president.
Yeah.
And
Barack Obama at the time, right?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, right. That was a thing.
I feel like we've been through changes, certainly, being where we are in 2026. I think there were times, and I think the America hasn't changed in a way, but it also has changed a lot. I think there were times where I feel like looking back now, maybe I was naive to believe that I truly belong, and maybe I did. But then now there are times now that I feel like maybe I don't, just because of the way things are. So it is, like I said, something that I question, right? And it depends on the interactions that I have with people or the news, or and it's something that as an immigrant, I don't know, even if you become a citizen, if you will then all of a sudden feel like you belong.
All of a sudden,
Yeah. So
I always wondered that, right? Like, and in so many ways, there isn't a magic bullet, right?
Yeah.
But there's this kind of desire to achieve that thing, right? That thing that might make us feel like we belong, or like make us feel like, oh, this thing, once I do this thing, I will feel this way. And that can happen in more than things than just belonging, but we often are kind of keep shooting for the next thing so that we can feel like we've achieved it or have gotten there, whatever that is. And I imagine with like citizenship for somebody who's an immigrant, that might be that thing that you're searching for to maybe feel like, oh, once I have that, I'll feel like I belong.
I don't know if that's the answer for everybody.
Right, for sure.
But personally, I feel like that wouldn't be the case for me because, it's just a label. It's a piece of paper.
Yeah.
It doesn't change who you are. It doesn't change how people treat you.
Right.
So certainly.
Yeah.
So,
And citizenship is not something that people know by looking at you, right? Like just by seeing Will does not necessarily mean that you're a citizen, right? Like you can't determine somebody's citizenship just by looking at them.
Some people think you can, but
some people think that you can't, which is a whole other issue and a whole other topic. But
one of the things you said, Xizhou, that I like to think about and kind of draw attention to again is you kind of thought maybe the country didn't really change, just kind of maybe some corners of it kind of being louder, maybe.
Yes.
And I think that is right. I think that's right in my perception as well. It feels like there's a change, but it's really just certain voices being louder. Yeah. And I think part of it comes from us trying to think of the USA, America, as one thing. And it's always a combination of many different subcultures and states and point of views and points of view that we don't always see the other ones because we end up in our, what are they called? Echo chambers. Or we're here in Madison, very liberal, Madison, Wisconsin, aren't going to see as often some of those very outspoken haters or even less than haters, people who are expressing some kind of bias.
Right.
Yeah. And so thinking of the USA as kind of one thing is always going to, at some time, lead to a feeling of like, oh, things have changed because you're just not knowing all the corners of it.
Right. And I think that happens in group and out group, right? I think that happens within the US that we have maybe even, US has a very self-important view of themselves. We tend to think we're the best, right? Just on the whole, and Big Brother and like all of these things. And so anytime, and we've talked about this before, right? Like we even externally, I think people put us on a pedestal in that way or view us a certain way or used to have a very certain specific idea of what it meant to be an American and land of the free and home of the brave, whatever that means, right? And for us as Americans have this specific idea of what that looks like and what that means. And then as time goes on or different things happen, and then all of a sudden it's like the veil gets pulled back, right? Like maybe it's not that this is new America or that this is something new or something has shifted, but we have a different understanding of things that have been here and have been part of this culture and been part of what it means to be here all along, but maybe is louder or is maybe much more apparent than we didn't necessarily see or understand or personally experience in the same way as we did from the outside. I even talk about that, like growing up in rural Oregon when I was younger, I didn't necessarily always understand things that were happening. And then later on, as I got older, it had language and could look back and I was like, oh, that's what that was, right? Like now I have a different understanding of what was there, what is there, what the reality is, right? That the rose-colored glass is kind of being removed and seeing it for what it really is. Yeah. For the good, bad, ugly, beautiful, and everything in between.
Yeah. And, every immigrant has their own story. Absolutely. And I didn't necessarily come to the United States for immigration purposes. I was here for education and I had a job and then got married, now I'm here. So I feel like as I learn more about both the events taking place and the history of the United States, like you said, that rose-colored glasses, they do come off. And then you have, in my case, I won't speak for everybody, doubts of, do I belong here, right? Should I stay here? Right. I have the option to, go back. Yeah. But those thoughts, they, I feel like they're big picture, right? Questions, but they also come into your everyday, conversation. Like, do I buy this couch today? Which is a big purchase when, perhaps next year I'll be moving, to back to China. So, even though they're big discussions, they also come into your everyday life that perhaps others don't really think about.
Yeah. And I mean, you have a house and all that. And
cats.
So, cats, of course.
Right.
Yeah. So a question maybe you'd like to talk about. So like, what does belonging look like for you and kind of what happens when you don't have it?
Yeah. So I feel like, especially nowadays, the belonging, it's something that I think about, and it really connects to your health and well-being, your mental health 100%. And physical health.
Absolutely.
I feel like everyone can connect to feeling belonging at the workplace, right? So if you belong at a workplace, you commit to your work and you feel like your voices are getting heard. But if you don't feel like you belong, whether it's to the workplace or overall, right, you can get detached and you're not quite fully living. You're kind of, some days I feel like zombieing through your day just to get by. And also part of it is your social life, being able to make new friends or connect to people near you. Or, on the other hand, if you don't feel like you belong, you're questioning, like, are they... do they have ill intentions of me or are they assuming things about me? That's something that I, just thoughts rummaging in your head. Yes.
Yeah. Well, and it contributes to your sense of trust and safety, right? Like feeling like I belong in a space allows me to relax a little bit and show up as my authentic self and trust the space, trust that if I win, not if, but when I make a mistake, whether that's personal or cultural or whatever, that the space knows me well enough that they're going to see me for all of it. I'm not going to be judged by that. I'm going to be like, it's a safe place for me. I feel like I belong. I want to be there. I want to contribute to them. I want them to contribute to me. And it's that, like, the belonging again, I go back to the sense of community, right? Like that sense of community is really where we start to feel that sense of belonging, that we can have a community at work. We can have our social community outside versus just like acquaintances versus friends and really truly meaningful relationship.
Yeah. And the safety and security that, it comes in at any moment, right? For example, and this is a kind of a silly example, but I asked someone it was a stranger to help me with something one day. I won't get into all the details. And they like outright refused. And that was no big deal. But I was thinking, well, if I was blonde, right, would they have the same reaction? Like, is this because I'm an immigrant or whatever? Right. It may totally not be the case, 100%. But you start having these doubts about your identity and your existence that I feel like I shouldn't have to think about that.
And those kinds of ambiguous situations where it's like, well, it could be because of your identities, or it could just maybe that person was in a rush. those actually have a bigger impact on your mental health. The research shows compared to more overt things. Because if someone is overtly a hater, you can just be like, that's a bad person or that's a rude person and dismiss it. But when you worry about it, like, oh, am I being too sensitive, thinking it might be biased, or maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, you ruminate on it more and it ends up having a bigger impact on your well-being.
Yeah, absolutely. And it contributes to the things we've talked about before, like racial battle fatigue, right? It was like we just get exhausted by constantly questioning, like, was that racial? Was that targeted at me? Was this like just having a really hard time relaxing in our interactions? And we have that sense of belonging. We have less of those ambiguous situations, or we have different interpretations of those ambiguous situations when it happens in a place where we feel like we belong.
Yeah.
One mini skill that I recommend for that sort of ambiguity situation is to just that had nothing to do with me. Because if it was a little bit of unintentional bias, then it really wasn't about you. It's about the stereotypes that are activated. Or if they're a hater, still not really about you. And so just as long as you're safe and it's not impacting your work life, or it's not going to impact you in some big way where you need to give it more attention, that had nothing to do with me. Like pull that out and try to use that to just keep protecting your well-being, because if it's not something that is like going to get you fired or whatever, then there's no good from dwelling on it.
Right. And I would just add to it that, like, from a clinical perspective, is absolutely being able to kind of say, like, this doesn't have anything to do with me, while also acknowledging, like, ooh, that hurt a little bit. And like that didn't feel great. I'm not sure where that came from. And I'm going to say, like, that likely had nothing to do with me, even if it like stung a little. I can acknowledge that probably had nothing to do with me. And so, like, being able to do the both and, right, of being able to acknowledge how it impacted and saying, like, it's probably not. I can let that go. But I think it's also important that we acknowledge, right, that it landed. that it landed.
It's a little twist on mindfulness. So mindfulness, we talk about your own thought and just letting it go. This is something coming from someone else. And if you're able, just let it go. And I absolutely agree. Like, naming it if it's like, oh, that hurt. Yeah, absolutely. I think we need to take a little break and then we'll be right back.
We'll be back.
Back from break. Next, we're going to go into story time. So Xizhou has graciously brought both the negative and the positive story. And so take it away.
Yeah.
What do you have?
So the negative story about belonging, this happened, I think, 2 years ago. I was, an artist at a farmer's market here in Madison. And there were other farmers there, many of which I assume they're Hmong. There's a huge Hmong community here. And it was towards the end of the market, and there was this white lady at the market, and she was kind of just shouting, all of these immigrants, or I don't remember the exact wording that she used, because that was 2 years ago, and I try to forget about it. But
it had nothing to do with you. So don't.
But she was saying, like, all these immigrants or all these Asians here taking other jobs, or they should be white people here, that along those lines. And she was yelling into the public. It wasn't directed to me. It wasn't directed to a specific stall, but you
were all catching strays, right? You were all catching the fire from that.
And it did came as a shock, because I think that was the first outright, racist behavior that I've had in Madison that I can remember. And in a place where, you have the community together and the farmers, and, they were working very hard, just trying to make a living, right? It was, it hurt.
Shocking. It hurt,
And I never went back to that market. Not necessarily only because of that incident, but I think that was certainly a part of it. Yeah, I don't think the farmers had the same opportunity to say, I'm not coming back, right? They still have to come back.
The same privilege.
But I think, it was just not a great experience, and certainly didn't make me feel like I belonged.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, somebody's explicitly telling you that you don't belong, right? Like, and it, one thing that you had mentioned and you kind of alluded to is that especially here in Madison, that's somewhat unexpected, right? To kind of see that, because it tends to be a more progressive city and like not really experiencing those things here. And I think that often when you're in spaces like this that feel really safe, you go into it with your guards down, right? You have your shield down. And so then when arrows or things are being shot at you, when your guards are down, you're catching those strays and you're catching them, and it hurts a lot more because you were unprepared for them, versus when you go into a space assuming or expecting that it might be a hostile environment, that you might expect some of those things coming up, then your shields are up and you're more likely able to kind of catch them as they come and know like, oh, that's not about me. Like I expected that to come. But when you're not expecting it, those arrows that hit you hurt and they impact you a lot more than when you're expecting it.
Yeah. And I feel like since then, every time, if my husband proposes that we drive to this small town, Wisconsin, I'm like, let me think about that. Right.
Let me pause. Yeah.
So if it's anything 30 minutes away from Madison, I have to think about it and just mentally prepare, even if it, nothing like this happens.
Right.
Yeah.
And an important part of that some people might not realize is, sometimes people are like, okay, so one person said something hateful. That's one thing, one incident, but it carries with you. It leaves a mark on you. And so it becomes then a doubt that you have to live with. And I think a lot of times people who try to kind of minimize the effects of bias or hate don't recognize that as much. But it's a common experience. It's not just you.
Yeah. Unfortunately, a common experience. Yeah.
And then I wanted to share a positive story as well. And it's a very similar situation. Yeah. This time it was at the Pride Market here in Madison in August last year. I was there exhibiting my art, and as a cis straight woman, not necessarily part of the LGBTQ plus community that were being celebrated in this festival, but seeing everybody, that were there, that could be their authentic self, it felt safe and it felt like I belonged, even though, again, I wasn't, that specific group. And
you're a great ally to our community. we love you, Xizhou.
Thank you.
And I'm glad the rest of the community felt that way for you.
Yeah, that's so great. Like, I think I often feel very similar when I'm particularly in the LGBTQ plus community, but I think a lot of times that's why, my BIPOC group, right? Like we're all different groups and come from different perspectives, but like that often those places do create this sense of safety, right? Like there's even if it's not the specific shared identity, but this kind of idea of shared understanding or experiencing minoritization, right? Like being stigmatized or being part of a minoritized group, that there's a sense of like community and safety and belonging, and often kind of like bring folks in. Not always. Let me just make that really clear. Like it's not 100%. It's not always the case. And I think that it is often a case that when we're in those group spaces, any space that kind of centers an identity, that there's room for lots of other identity, like minoritized groups to feel a part of and belonging there. So.
What nice aspect of totally agreeing with Amber, and it's not always,
right?
But it's kind of a higher probability of it being more welcoming across things, because being a member of a stigmatized group, you have to examine stigma, power, privilege, bias, all these sorts of things. And so hopefully if you're doing that thoughtfully, you see how it's not just about your group. It can be about other groups having similar experiences. And so we can have that community across in
like cross-group
nice
solidarity.
Yes.
Which we talked about
in
last
season one.
Season one.
Season one.
Yeah.
That was a cool episode with Nikki. Yeah. So a lot of, just to briefly recap it for anyone who's interested, and for Xizhou, a lot of like civil rights movements really were about cross-group solidarity. So the disability rights movement was supported by the Black Panthers, LGBT rights movement, similar things. So sometimes groups are better organized and then can help one another in their respective struggles, which is lovely.
Yeah. And again, creating belonging across like within your group, but also with other groups as well. Mm-hmm.
And I feel like it comes down to empathy, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which, you know, I feel like I wish it wasn't the case that you have to be marginalized first,
right,
to then feel for those others who are marginalized. But that's the empathy that you know.
Absolutely.
I know what it feels like.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And then the question is, how can those groups empower? Have more empathy, and you know, because it shouldn't be, you know, only on those marginalized, even when it is a community together, to make change or to help each other, right?
Yeah.
So,
or to create belonging for folks. Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing.
Yeah,
that's great.
Absolutely. So, Xizhou, as I said, is an amazing statistician and mathematician.
I will hire you in the future.
I benefited so much when we worked together. And so we had a question that I am so happy to have your expertise to discuss a little bit. So what are some challenges when you're working with data comparing identity groups? So this could be, so sometimes in our research, we want to say like mental health in white and Black communities, there might be similarities, might be differences that we want to look at between the groups. Or sometimes we do that with like math ability or, and there are a number of concerns when we're talking about a bigger group compared to a smaller group when you're doing statistics. So that could also be straight versus LGBT and so on. And what are some of those concerns that we should think about?
Mm-hmm. There are definitely challenges because one of the first things that you learn in Stats 101, right, when you conduct, let's say, a chi-square test is when you have groups that are very small, you lump them together or you drop them, right, because you need a certain number for that significant testing. So when you have, let's say, Black or other ethnic groups that are much smaller, it definitely creates a mathematical challenge. And with the smaller sample size, it is harder for that estimate to be reliable, and you have less statistical power. But and when it's the case that you do have multiple, it wouldn't be fair or the right practice to lump them together, even though that's
like lumping together Asian with Black. With,
even though that's what
statistically,
Well, even though that's what you would do on paper, it wouldn't make sense in practice. Because there's
qualitative differences between the groups that you don't want to just lump together.
Yes, and that can also make the group difference seem bigger than they are when there's skewing involved between the large and the small group. So definitely challenges, and we need to be mindful with how we approach or take more effort in collecting more samples when we can to kind of overcome that.
Yeah, absolutely. And mentioning the skewing. So if you think about a normal distribution that's kind of like a hump, a skew is when one of the tails is kind of longer and skinnier than the other. And when we're talking about human data, African-American, Black American communities, when you look at education and SES, that is heavily, heavily skewed towards the Black communities because of, systemic racism and history, being poorer and less educated. But then that ends up meaning when you compare them in cities like Madison, where we have a relatively much smaller than the national average of the Black community, that skewing ends up making it look like the Black and white communities are much farther apart because of that small sample size plus the skew creating that kind of problem. So there was an issue a few years ago where it was some school district, and I'm not going to say, I don't remember offhand which one, but they said, this is the worst school district in the entire country in terms of the difference between Black and white students. And it was with this tiny sample size plus the skewing. And I was like, there aren't enough Black kids in Madison to have a reliable sample where you could compare it to Chicago or Detroit or whatever. So saying that we're the worst in the country, it's just statistically, you can't really make that claim by this like kind of simple comparison and weighing it to places that have a 17% Black population when we have less than 6%.
Yeah. And I think that's the important, part of interpreting data, right? Even though the data may say one thing, how you explain it that's different. So you're telling a story that even though it fits what the data is saying, you need to think about how you came to this conclusion, in this case, the sample size and the skewing, to make that right interpretation.
Yeah. And there were some people who then, took the statistic, took that, the worst in the country. Like there were headlines, there were things like Madison is the worst place in the country for Black youth. Yeah. And it was like, well, we can look at other things, like, so they don't get shot. We don't have gang violence. Data. Yeah. Like, are you sure it's worse here for them than maybe some places that might have more of those kinds of things? There's more than just the one statistic also. And so I hope everyone seek out statistical literacy whenever you can, and
which is
think
hard
deeply.
to do. Yeah, but I think that it is so important because it's very easy for people to make those simple comparisons and to take a little bit of knowledge on statistics and stats and to make those simple comparisons. Don't do the contextualizing, don't do transformative interpretations, and being really intentional about how they write up what the results actually mean. And it can be used and weaponized against communities, against populations, against cities, against just school districts.
Or just for a headline grab.
Or just for a clickbait. Yeah, absolutely. And so often, it just happens so easily and so often, even just the idea of correlation and causation, right? Or these things are correlated, and then all of a sudden they're talking about that this causes this. Well, no, they happen to happen at the same time. Does not mean that one causes the other. But more statistical literacy, me included, is so important.
But part of literacy is recognizing when you have a limitation, as you were talking about before we got on, Mike. Amber, knows what her strengths are.
Exactly. And math and stats is not it.
It's the kind of dangerously ignorant or naive folks who think they know more than they do where we start getting some of these.
Yes.
So,
absolutely. So, Will, what is our habit-breaking skill this episode?
Well, I wanted to schedule Xizhou to join on this episode because she actually did some of this research with me. We did it together. She's an author on one of the papers.
That's so cool.
So the overall skill is cognitive inertia. So we talk a lot about these biases being like habits. And once something has been learned and rehearsed in your mind so much that it becomes habitual, there are a number of things your brain does to kind of maintain that habit. This is what makes habits hard to break. And in an ideal world where humans were perfectly rational, we might have learned a stereotype in our childhood, like Amber and I talked about last episode, but then we would face real evidence in the world, and then we would learn the stereotype isn't as true as we think it is, and start believing the stereotype less and less, and the stereotype would affect us less and less. That's not what happens, though, because we aren't purely rational processors of information. And that's what we mean by cognitive inertia. There are these things that kind of keep those cognitions, keep those habits going, even when the evidence sometimes says the exact opposite of what your mental habit is, what the bias says. And there are kind of three bullet points of these types of cognitive inertia that I just want to briefly call out. The first is called attentional spotlight. So where your attention gets drawn is biased in favor of preserving stereotypes, preserving your pre-existing cognitions. You're literally your eyes kind of moving towards information gets drawn towards information that confirms stereotypes and gets drawn away from evidence that disconfirms stereotypes, because you don't want to have to deal with that. You don't have to, your brain literally doesn't want to spend the energy it takes to rewire things in your mind. So your attention gets drawn towards evidence that confirms and strengthens stereotypes. Then even if you get past the attention, if we force ourselves to pay full attention to every piece of evidence, your brain weighs these things differently. And this is one of the big studies that Xizhou and I did. Your brain tends to give more weight to confirmatory evidence. And in the studies we did in our lab, it kind of came out to a 3-to-1 ratio. For every one time someone confirmed a stereotype in our research study, it took 3 people who disconfirmed that same stereotype just to balance out the influence of that one person. And this number, it's not a magical number. I don't want you to go away thinking it applies to everything. It's just, it's kind of partially an artifact of how we designed our study. But it's a nice rule of thumb. A lot of people have found it to be handy because if they run into someone who confirms a stereotype, they try to think of at least 3 examples or maybe more than 3 to try to balance out that one person.
It's kind of similar to those studies around like needing multiple positive influences to overcome a negative one,
absolutely.
right? So like having one negative comment and needing several other, at least 3 plus or minus 2, right? A positive comment to kind of override the one negative experience or comment.
Yeah. Confirmation bias. So an imbalance in how your brain kind of weighs those different types of evidence. And then the third big thing for cognitive inertia, which was actually the main point of the studies that Xizhou and I did, it's called untested assumptions. So that's when there's actually no evidence, but when you make an assumption about someone, it becomes kind of a mental rehearsal that strengthens the idea in your mind. So I often say, think about times tables. Like if you're a kid learning, okay, 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 2 is 4, you're repeating it in your mind, and that makes it stronger and stronger and stronger. It's the same thing when we make assumptions about people. If I walk past, let's say, a black student on campus, and I'm like, oh, I bet he's on the basketball team. That's a common assumption we hear about students making a lot, and actually what we did in one of our studies. We don't run up to the student and be like, oh, I was thinking you were on the basketball team. Am I right about that? Probably not. But in your head, it's just like the 2 times 2 equals 4. You see a black student, you think, oh, he's on the basketball team. Your brain encodes that as if it were real information.
As if it were truth.
And yeah, so I when we were planning this, I believe you all had some examples that we wanted to share.
Yeah, it just reminded me of this. It's kind of a cute story. So I had a friend in college. We were both stats majors, and we were in a stats class together, and we started talking, and she was like, actually, we were in the same computer science class together, and there were only 3 women, and I wanted to talk to you, but I didn't know if you spoke English at all. And I assume you didn't, so I didn't talk to you then. And it's the perfect example of untested assumptions, right? She didn't ask, she just assumed. And it's, in this case, harmless, but
missing out on potential connection, making a friend.
100%. Yeah, I was saying that I had a student once who is a Korean American woman, and she was saying that she had a patient come in, and she's like 3rd generation, I think, and that came in, and when she started talking to her, and they were like, oh, I expected you to have an accent. And she was like, I'm from San Francisco. Like, I grew up here. Like, my family's from here. Like, why would you assume that, right? And they said that, historically, they have intentionally tried not to get particularly Asian providers because they assumed that they wouldn't be able to understand them because they would have an accent. And so, it's just this, again, an untested assumption that, oh, I see an Asian person, I'm assuming that they're going to have an accent, and also that I'm not going to understand them because they have an accent. And so, like, even that is an untested assumption too, right? Just because somebody has an accent doesn't mean you're not going to be able to understand them or to be able to connect with them, right?
And so later in the season, we're going to get to one of the other skills, seeking individuating information. Right. And the example I used normally is this kind of assuming someone, because you see, if we saw Xizhou's name on a paper, immediately like, oh, maybe this person doesn't speak English very well, and then makes the same kind of assumption Amber's talking about. Well, frankly, just because someone has a white bread name doesn't mean they speak English well.
100%.
And so, but if you get the information you need, so if speaking English well and understanding is an important part of the job, get that information ahead of time from everyone, not because you're making assumptions, but because you don't want assumptions. You want the information. So everyone submits a speaking sample, and then you're not letting the assumption drive decisions. You're letting proper information drive it. So get a bonus extra skill.
Bonus skill today. Hey.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, did you have something you wanted to add?
Oh, I was gonna just make a comment about the white bread name. Is hilarious way to put it. But a lot of immigrants, they do adapt, right? An English or anglicized name. And so one thing that I did also do that in, during college and briefly after graduation. But that didn't feel like me.
Yeah.
And because it wasn't my name.
Signal did not belong.
Yeah.
And I kind of went back to using my legal name. And I think it's kind of taking back the power, right?
100%.
And, as
the
a way
reclaiming.
to, yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. And this is my name. And I should feel like I belong using my actual name.
Yeah.
So...
And expecting others to learn how to say it correctly, right? And saying it correctly.
And I remember the very first lab meeting we had with you, and I said your name just so completely wrong. You can do better than that. And you just explained it's she like the pronoun and Joe like the boy's name.
Yeah.
And from then on, I just had it. So it's an effort. Like I would want to be saying it right. And just making that connection. It's not a hard name to say.
Right. No,
I'm sure that we probably aren't getting the tonal stuff right because we can't hear that because that's a issue with English speakers versus Chinese folks.
But it's a lot closer now than what you did. Whatever that was. Whatever
it was you were saying before.
I think I was pronouncing it phonetically. Like I think I was probably like
do not do attempt that.
Don't attempt to do it wrong now. Xizhou. I say it right now.
Yeah. Well, and again, like there is a reclamation, right? Where I'm reclaiming this, and if I'm going to feel like I truly belong, right? Then I want to be known as Xizhou, right? And like this is me, not whatever, Gloria, you know?
Awesome.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah,
I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
So let's go to our last break. Right. So we're back from break with the amazing Xizhou. And now I'm messing up your name, Xizhou.
And that's okay.
Thank you.
Acknowledge that.
I messed it up. And then move on. We always end our episodes with a joyful recommendation. And since you have been our amazing guest, we'd love to hear what you want to recommend for us.
Yeah. I wanted to recommend this musician who is my current favorite. Her name is Laufey. It's spelled Laufey. She is Icelandic, and she's half Icelandic, half Chinese. She's making jazz music cool for this new younger generation of kids. Yes. But I love her whole vibe, her very whimsical aesthetic, kind of slightly retro, that bossa nova type music.
Kind of lounge music-y from the one that I heard.
I love her. Yeah. And speaking of saying her name incorrectly, I appreciate hearing it pronounced correctly because I have been just saying, I think Laufey. I think I've just been again assuming. I haven't even looked to hear it said. So I really appreciate.
I've already forgotten the right way to say it. What is it?
It's Laufey, I believe, from what I see her on interviews, and it's good to see Chinese representation in pop culture. She is huge. She won a Grammy, and representation is so important, and it resonates too that she has a name that's hard to pronounce.
And her music truly, last episode, I think my joy was about discovering quote unquote new music from TikTok, and I came across her music there, and it's this I think you described it when I was trying to say how I felt about it, like main character energy music. So anytime I want to feel whimsical or I want to feel like I'm in my own movie and need the soundtrack to my life, I put her music on and I just feel like I'm just yes, this is like I'm in a cafe and romanticizing my life. It's beautiful. It's truly great music. I love it. Yeah. Excellent recommendation.
I'm excited to listen to more of it.
Yeah.
All right. So while we're building up to my book coming out next month, March 17th, it's going to actually be out. We're doing one little tiny extra recommendation, which is just my book every month.
So I'm new here. Could you tell me the title of the book?
Yes. So my book, the full title is Overcoming Bias Habits, an Evidence-Based Guide to Creating a Joyfully Inclusive World. or Overcoming Bias Habits for short.
Yeah.
So it's already available to order if you're hearing this episode. We do a different endorsement every month, and this is a special endorsement.
Very special endorsement.
So this month, the short endorsement that Amber is going to read is from Dr. Harolyn Belcher, which is the person who brought Amber and I together.
Right. Yeah.
So when Amber and I met, I was at a conference that Harolyn asked me to come and speak at, and then there was a social hour where she connected a lot of the speakers at this conference, including myself and Amber, who worked with her at the time. Yeah. She's a professor at Johns Hopkins Medical School. She is amazing. She is dynamic and brilliant scholar. And she is one of those people who is just always so busy, and I don't understand how she finds time for anything. I don't
know how this woman has the energy, how she juggles the number of things she juggles. Incredible human.
And I'm grateful that she juggles these things because she agreed to read my book and write this lovely endorsement. So thank you, Harolyn, if you're listening.
Yeah, Harolyn. And super meaningful because she's our connection, and she is that person that creates belonging for people. Absolutely. And all of what she does, and every part of, like, she's always trying to create connection and create a sense of rootedness and belonging. And she just cares so deeply about her work. I could talk about this woman all day. Has been a mentor of mine, has stayed in touch, and I absolutely
constant
love her.
source of joy.
Constant source of joy and inspiration. I want to be her when I grow up. And she writes, Dr. Cox takes us on a collaborative learning journey, sharing his decades-long research and practice in an approachable format that invites each of us to become change agents to detect, reflect, and reject bias and experience diverse joy. Practice makes progress. Web-based resources add to the learning journey and promote continued growth and sharing. Dr. Harolyn Belcher.
Yay.
So good. And again, it highlights exactly what this book is and does. And it is a collaborative approach. It is accessible in how it's written and what it's talking about. It's practical. Order yours today.
Yes, please do. For your learning.
Yeah. For your learning, for your journey. Yes.
All right. I'm Dr. William Cox.
And I'm Dr. Amber Nelson.
Our guest today was Xizhou Xie. And you can check her out online if you go to Xizhou Xie. And her name is spelled Xizhou space. The last name is Xie. And we will have it in the episode description, including the links to her socials. You can see her art by Xizhou Xie, Instagram and Facebook. She puts out so many fun, amazing videos of her making the art behind the scenes when she goes to festivals and Pride things, and her art is just beautiful. I have 2 custom pieces she made for me that are in my house, and you can also buy like fun coasters, like those of you who are watching can see. Lots of great stuff. So check out all her wonderful work.
Thank you for coming and being with us.
Thank you for having me and giving me space to share.
Absolutely. We hope you felt belonging while you were here.
Definitely.
Awesome. All right. So Diverse Joy is produced by Eric Roman Beining with music by Jay Arner. Follow us at Diverse Joy on most social media platforms for extra content every month. If you enjoy the show, help us reach more people by leaving a 5-star review or by recommending it personally. Word of mouth accounts for 70% of how people find new podcasts. New episodes release the first Wednesday of every month. You can watch us on YouTube. You can listen in any podcasting app or check us out at diversejoy.com. That's also where you can send in your stories or questions. Also, you can find additional diversity education resources, buy some of our incredible merchandise, or donate to support the show. Diverse Joy is the official podcast of Inequity Agents of Change, a nonprofit devoted to evidence-based approaches to reduce bias, create inclusion, and promote equity. All that good Jedi work. Learn more at biashabit.com. Thank you for joining us. Now, go find your joy.
Bye.
Bye.
And I wasn't, you're saying white bread, that totally just caught me off guard. That was hilarious.